evening. It is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026 at 6:02. We are going to call this meeting to order. We are in the H.J. McAllister Administration Board Building Boardroom, and this meeting was posted according to law, and we do have a quorum present. We have no audience with patrons this evening, and we'll jump right into reports.
Good evening, everybody. It is that time. The first thing I need to talk to you about today, though, is the attendance credit report. So we were notified by the state that we will have to go ahead and elect our district attendance choice towards the attendance credit. What that means is that TA is currently predicting that our estimated local yield per penny per watt exceeds the tier 2 threshold of $49.72. That is an approximation right now. As you remember, a lot of these things are moving parts, and as Payne's reports throughout the years, as certified values come in, as other things kind of affected, that number could change and could fluctuate, but that is what we keep track of throughout the year. There are a couple of things that we need to kind of hit on. The first thing I want to talk about real fast is what WADA is. I know that was a question that a couple of board members had asked, so I just wanted to address that to everybody right now. So you have ADA, which is average daily attendance, but WADA is weighted average daily attendance. And what that means, that's our students' attendance adjusted for students and district characteristics like special needs, bilingual, the transportation allotment even comes into play for our WADA. So that number has a lot of moving parts, and it's not something that can be just kind of easily calculated on fly. We try our best to do that. The $49.72, I know there was a question about where that particular piece came from. That's actually the copper penny multiplier. Sorry guys. That's a copper penny multiplier. That multiplier is 0.008. So if you take that 0.008 and times it by that basic allotment of $6,215, that's where they get that $49.72. So what you need to be aware of is the next board meeting. We are going to ask you to approve intent to purchase the attendance credit. What that does is that gives us a chance to inflate our WADA to go ahead and drive down that over the threshold number that we have. It's kind of purchasing fake kids to go ahead and pull into our attendance, basically is what that does. The one thing that you really need to be aware of is this will throw us into an election that we're going to have to do. This is a one and done election. It needs to occur 45 days after you've submitted the contract to the state. So that places that time frame around the late February to early March. The 45 days is an approximation. The elections, I've talked to our elections attorneys on this one. They said there are a couple of things that can come into play that can push it past 45 days, and that's allowable. If that election occurs, which we are going to have to do that, if we do not do an election, what will happen is the state will actually come in to take some of our property tax roll and allocate that to another entity. So we do not want to lose that property tax roll, and that is a permanent loss to another entity. So this is what needs to happen. A lot of school districts who fall into this, they do these attendance credit elections whenever that happens, whenever that first happens through there. So and it's a one and done. We do the election, it gets potentially approved. If it passes, then we receive ongoing voter authority from there on out to purchase attendance credits every year if it's required, if the state requires us to do so. If it fails, TEA may use the property detachment to equalize funding. I did actually reach out to TEA and ask them, well, what happens if that amount is $0 that we owe to the state? And she really didn't give me 100% verifiable answer that I feel comfortable with, like, oh, we've detached property value. So we can't lean a whole bunch on assuming that that's what's gonna happen. But if there is overpayments that happens, we don't actually cut a check back to the states. What they do is they just take that out of our funding that we get, that comes through in September, October, that time frame, they'll just withhold that back. So are there any questions over this particular piece?
I do want to clarify that what you guys would be asked to vote on next week, that doesn't trigger the election.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just saying, yeah, we approve us to do this, and then you wouldn't, we would come back and give you an order that you would approve, right?
Yes, correct.
In that order, we would want to time that as late as possible before the January 15th.
January 15th is the timeline, and it's technically a contract, so we'll approve the contract, and when we approve that, that'll trigger that 45-day window.
Are there any questions? All right. All right, we have, we're gonna move into our next item of business, which is a public hearing on proposed tax rates.
Okay, so board in front of you, I placed the lovely blue folders. I did not lose any blood this time, we had a line actually. But that's the other version. All right, so in this folder, I just kind of want to orient you to some of the items that are there. In the pocket, there is a loose piece of paper, and it should say suggestion motions for items of business, so this will be carried through tonight, so if there's a question over what specific language that needs to happen, because one of the motions that we will eventually have tonight requires specific language. So I did want to just point you to this piece of paper before we go into the public meeting. So with the proposed tax rate, there are some documents in your folder. As you come through there, we're going to kind of hit the high points. I did provide quite a bit of information for you. More of it is for you to peruse at a later date if you would so choose, or if you have any more questions. We're gonna go through those there. So the very first piece of this is the notice of public meeting to discuss the budgeted proposed tax rate. This is the notice, the one that I have on the board is the notice that actually went into the paper that you may or may not have seen. So it was posted in a timely manner. It was in there. So what you should take away from this notice is that our maintenance tax rate that we are proposing is 0.7389. And our school debt service or INS tax rate that we're proposing is 0.2309 for a total proposed tax rate of 0.9689. On the second page of that notice, there is in the kind of in the middle area, this is kind of how, or this is how this will actually affect taxpayers. So the average market value of residences last year was $203,000. This year it's about $212,787 with $140K exemption. And that isn't, if you look from the 212,787 to 78,624, that's not quite 140. There is a little bit of difference there. And the reason that there's difference there is the over 65 and disabled exemptions may actually vary. And then not every residence is actually homesteaded. So not every residence gets that $140,000. So if there's a question as to why it's not 140K, that's the reasoning behind that. Last year's rate proposed versus our $100 value. So for our 0.9698, what we're looking at is taxes due on the average residence would be about $762 a year. Which is an increase of $74 a year, or $6.17 per month. And I do have another breakdown of that here in just a little bit. So with that, the next page in there are our certified values. So I do want to go ahead and point out some of the major items on the certified values page through here. They are listed in red, kind of sitting at the bottom through there. What we're going to be looking at is the freeze adjusted M&O net taxable. Those are the two items, and the freeze adjusted INS net taxable. Those are the items highlighted in yellow. I've given you your values for last year. So the 2025 freeze adjusted M&O value was 2.458. And then the freeze adjusted INS was 2.668. The M&O did decrease from 25 to 26. By approximately $372 million. The reason that decreased was because Rome's 313 limitation basically was enacted. So that they fell off the rules. Rome fell off the rules. The INS increased though from 26 to 27 by approximately $339 million. And if there is a net taxable portion and a freeze adjusted net taxable portion, if you see those two in there, I just have a definition, so that way if you want to know what the difference between those two pieces are. We do look at freeze adjusted though to help us calculate out our tax rates and our percentage products. Any questions over those? So with that being said, there are a couple of documents that I have in here that says preliminary tax rate worksheet. What you need to know about this, these must be included, but the calculations on these sheets are if they were doing the minimum value. As you know, the board, we are looking at potentially adopting a waiver tonight. So the values in here will actually have to be recalculated, not on the fly. So Ms. Cook is actually here to help us with that, and we'll walk you through that in just a second. But the values in here have to be presented, but they are not applicable to us at this time, okay? The next paper in there says the OMA taxpayer impact statement, or the next set of papers. This is required to be posted for every board meeting. It has at the top OMA, if you see it. It's a couple of pages over past the worksheet, for the worksheet. So this will actually be posted with every single board agenda. I don't know if you noticed that this has been starting to be appearing at the top of the page. This has been adjusted for our new values that are on there. And then if you turn the page, I've given you an overview of BCISD's historical tax rates. Oh yeah, there's this thing. So what I've got here is from 2022 to 2023, what our MNO9S values were. So that came to a total of 1.26. This year in 2026, 2027, like I said, we're adopting the 0.73890, or you will be adopting that. That MNO value will stay the same from last year. Our INS rate will go from 0.26179 last year to 2.3090 this year, which is a change of a little, about 3 cents or so through there, to give us a total of 0.96980. So with the potential waiver in bonds, that includes both of those values, and then we will be dropping 0.03089 cents. I did just a quick calculation because the 2022-2023 $1.26 total in there. Assuming the average home, so taking that first worksheet that we had, that had the average home value of $212,787. Back in 2022-2023, that home would have only had a 40K exemption on it. And with a tax rate of $1.26, the school district's tax rates on that particular home would have actually been $2,177. Whereas, that's a difference of about $1,415 for this year's rate. That is not necessarily an apples to apples comparison, of course, because home values have changed, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how those numbers are kind of affected. I did have, in reviewing this, going over this actually with Mr. Holly, he asked, well, what happened, why is it so much more with everything else? You do also need to remember though that, our hospital district also taxes you disease taxes as well. So that is it for the public hearing. Do you have any questions or do you have any questions?
All right. We will move into items of business. So item A is conduct new trustee intake, including issuance of certificate of election and completion of statement of office.
So you will need to read this and for your oath of office.
I, Justin Matthews, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the school board of trustees for the Bay City ISD, our Bay City Independent School District of the state of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God.
Sounds good. We'll sign there. And then we will go to, so this is your certificate of office and you're just going to go up and this is exactly what you just read.
Well. Yeah. Okay, and then you were elected in or appointed into a position for. That is all done. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You can go ahead and have a seat over there. And thank you for going to the same time.
All right, welcome. There we go. All right, item B, discuss and consider adoption of 2026 maintenance and operations tax rate.
Okay, so the maintenance and operations tax rate, you may see a page in your binder that has FSP kind of towards the top. It has M&O tax rate, kind of down at the bottom. So what we are proposing is 0.5689 with 0.05 golden pennies, with an additional 0.12 Baker pennies. Those are 3 golden, and then the rest are copper, to give us 0.7389 cents. So if the board so chooses, there is a motion on the loose leaf sheet of paper in there that.
So it says item B,
Yes,
M&O tax rate motion.
Move that the board of trustees adopt maintenance and operating tax rate of 0.7389 for $100 valuation tax year 2026.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Sorry.
All right, we have a first and a second. Are there any further questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, item C, discuss and consider approval of a resolution authorizing adoption of an interest sinking fund tax rate in excess of the minimum rate required to service district debt.
so this is essentially a decent authorization, so our INS tax rate with our no URL rate to maintain the same level. Was 0.2189, we're suggesting an INS rate of 0.2309, which is a change of 0.012, or an increase of 0.012. This will actually go ahead and allow us to keep that same rate next year as the bond, if you do so choose to call for that, and if it is voted for the election, that bond number will actually stay the same, but that INS rate will stay the same for us.
All right, if you look on the loose leaf paper, there is a motion next to item C.
I move that the board of trustees approve an interest in sinking fund tax rate of 0.23090 for $100 valuation for tax year 2026. Board finds that the district's minimum debt service tax rate is 0.21890 for $100 valuation. That the proposed tax rate exceeds the minimum debt service tax rate by 0.01200 per $100 valuation. And that the additional revenue generated by the proposed rate will be used for lawful debt service purposes, including the payment of principal and interest on outstanding obligations, the establishment of reserves, and the thesis of redemption of outstanding bonds.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further questions?
Who was second?
Sure. Or
Sorry, you gotta read it out loud.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thanks, David, appreciate it. So what has to happen now, because you adopted that decent tax rate, that he could, I don't know if anybody, is familiar, if everybody's familiar with Miss Becky Cook, she's an Attleboro County county elected. She's actually here to go ahead and sign the revised tax rate calculation worksheet, the blue one that's in your form, so at this point in time, she technically should be recalculating and signing that, for good to go. You're good to go. All right, so thank you, Becky, for that for us, I really appreciate it.
All right, item D. Discuss and consider adoption of the 2026 interest and sinking fund tax rates. Is there a motion to be made?
I move that the board of trustees adopt an interest and sinking tax rate of 0.23090 per $100 valuation for tax year 2026.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in, any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item E, discuss and consider approval of an order of the Board of Trustees for the Bay City Independent School District calling a voter approved tax rate election later on November 3rd, 2026.
That one is, that's done.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve an order calling a voter approved tax rate election on November 3rd, 2026.
All right, there is a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Trent.
Yes, ma'am. All right, item F, discuss and consider approval of an order of the Board of Trustees for Bay City Independent School District calling a bond election for November 3rd, 2026.
Before this one is approved, I do want to say that the bond is going to be for $8 million. However, with consultation with our financial advisors, they are projecting that to be anywhere from 6.7 to potentially 7.5, depending on the interest rates at the time. So we're going to go for the higher amount, but we will actually sell it for whatever amount is required at that time. Fed won't need to set interest rates until September. So with that being said, I just kind of wanted to let you know that piece of it, that's why there's an $8 million.
Is there a motion to be made?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve an order calling a bond election to be held by the Bay City Independent School District, making provision for the conduct of the election and resolving other matters related to that election.
All right, there is a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, this evening we have nothing on the consent agenda. And then so we will move into executive session. Personnel matters, if necessary, may be taken into closed session through Texas Government Code 551.074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, and reassignment to these discipline, resignation, or dismissal of public officer or employee, including contract recommendation for campus and district level administrators and teachers. We will move into closed session at 6:25. Alright. We will reconvene into open session at 7:34. Oh, yep, 6:34, sorry. It's not 7:34. Item one, discuss and consider approval of hiring of contractual personnel. Is there a motion?
For the record.
Oh, yeah, for the record. We went down the stairs. Yeah, for the record.
Oh, okay.
I think motion to approve employment personnel is presented for.
Alright, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Alright, we have a first and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none, all in favor? None opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Alright, motion to adjourn. Last item of business adjournment. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion? Second. Any questions? Alright, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. We'll adjourn this meeting at 7:35.
That all.
35.
That's right.
Years ago, Jason showed us.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the name and then I looked at Facebook, I was like, somewhere and I thought, and I.
April